Muaz al-Khatib, welcome to the program. Thanks for joining me.
شكرا جزيلا أهلا بك.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Let me ask you first about the news of the day. The United Nations is demanding that the UN peacekeepers who've been kidnapped, abducted by rebels in Syria, that they be released. Can you achieve that? Can you make the rebel forces release those UN peacekeepers?
Dear sister, I have an important message to the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. Please take this message and relay it to him. What we have is not rebels. What we have is revolutionaries who are fighting for freedom, and they did not kidnap anyone, and I'm going to give you details. There is an area in Syria which has been under constant bombardment for the last 7 days, and there was a group of United Nations peacekeepers in that area who were in immediate danger. What our troops did is took them out of harm's way, and they are now completely safe and sound.
In that case, Mr. al-Khatib, will they be released back to the main UN peacekeeping force?
The revolutionaries are completely ready to turn in the peacekeepers to the United Nations under one condition, that the Red Cross should come and pick them up, and also the Red Cross should evacuate the injured innocent civilians. We have more than 150 injured innocent civilians who suffered injuries under this savage, barbaric bombardment.
Can you confirm that the revolutionaries, as you call them, who hold the peacekeepers are under your control or under the control of the Free Syrian Army?
The faction within the Syrian Free Army which controls the peacekeepers is called the Yarmouk Martyrs, or the Yarmouk Martyrs Brigades. And this faction is totally abiding by the international laws, and they are only seeking freedom like the rest of the Syrian nation. The peacekeepers are all safe and sound under the full care of the Yarmouk Martyrs. I actually spoke with the leadership a few minutes ago, and they did confirm that they have control of the peacekeepers and they're willing to turn them into the Red Cross.
Let me move on to aid from the United States. Are you satisfied with what you have received and what you've been pledged by the United States over the last week, particularly in Rome, $60 million towards the Free Syrian Army in terms of non-lethal aid, but nonetheless more help?
I am thankful for this kind of aid which is given to the Syrian people. However, what we expect and ask for is much bigger. We ask for a complete stoppage of the savage bombardment which the Syrian people have been suffering from for the last 2 years or so. This is what we are expecting.
Mr. al-Khatib, let me play you something that the U.S. Secretary of State said about their pledge to the Syrian opposition.
We are determined that the Syrian opposition is not going to be dangling in the wind, wondering where the support is or if it's coming. And we are determined to change the calculation on the ground for President Assad.
Do you believe that the pledge that the U.S. has made will change the calculation for President Assad?
I'm going to be honest here. There were so many previous pledges in the past. We have been waiting for these pledges to come through. The Syrian people now can only believe what they actually see on the ground. We are grateful for the pledges, but we are waiting for realistic results on the ground. And the most important thing here is that the savage, barbaric bombardment against the Syrian civilians has to stop. The Syrian people have been suffering this savage bombardment and genocide for about 2 years now. Why did the United States step in Kosovo and elsewhere to stop the genocide of civilians? And why isn't the Syrians worth the same kind of treatment?
What difference would it make to your side, to your cause, if you were to receive military assistance, support, intelligence in this fight?
I think things will change radically if this happens.
You must have asked Secretary Kerry in Rome when you met why the United States does not provide this assistance. What did he say to you? What do U.S. officials say to you?
The United States seems to be trying to distance itself from conflicts around the world, which is not a bad thing. It's generally good. However, under the circumstances that we are having now, when an innocent civilian nation is being subject to genocide, I think that attitude of distancing oneself should change. As I said before also, there seems to be an international will to not equip the opposition with weapons, and this has to change.
The United States and many in the West are very concerned about the jihadis, the elements in the rebellion linked to al-Qaeda. Apparently about a fifth of the opposition is made up of that. Do you not understand their concern, and are you worried that that will overwhelm your rebel forces, that the jihadis have too much space inside Syria right now?
First of all, there seems to be some type of phobia in the international media which it seems to exaggerate matters. And I'd like to ask the United States officials and other Western officials, are they not afraid of the reaction of a civilian nation that's being subject to genocide and bombardment for 2 years? A few days ago, I was inside Syria, and I got to meet and speak with many of the leaderships inside the Syrian opposition. This negligence and this ignoring of the savage massacre that the Syrian civilians are suffering is what is going to ignite anger and ignite terrorism. Our Syrian people is generally a religious one. Those who are radical or illogical are very few, and they will have very little influence in the future.
Let me turn to negotiations. You have in the past talked about negotiations, and it now seems that the Assad regime is willing more and more to hold negotiations. Just this week in Moscow, the Syrian Foreign Minister Walid al-Mualem said that the authorities were willing to talk even with armed members of the opposition. This is a first. Is that sufficient? Is that an opening for you to sit down with the regime and discuss an end to this?
This is the first time that the Syrian regime says in public that they are willing to negotiate with the armed members of the opposition. However, for the last 2 years, they have been doing nothing but lying to the Syrian people inside the country.
Right, but now they're saying they're willing. Now they're saying they're willing.
There are tens of thousands of prisoners, political prisoners, that we asked that they be released. The Syrian regime refused. When the regime is willing to restructure itself and to get rid of those who have been massacring the Syrians, and when the political prisoners are set free, that's when we will be willing to sit down and negotiate.
Earlier this week, you sent out a very anguished plea, and you said, "This might be my last message to you." You were addressing the UN and the international community. What did you mean?
I am now in an official position working for the Syrian people. And being in this position, I have been feeling the pains that my people are having and are going through. There is, however, a limit that I can take these pains. After that limit, I will abandon this position and I will serve the cause of my nation in the way I deem appropriate.
Muaz al-Khatib, thank you so much for joining me.
شكرا جزيلا أخت أمان.
Thank you very much, Sister Christian.